All right, so after getting excited about looking at different cities that he might invest in, Joe decides to be more conservative and he's going to make his first investment in and around his hometown of Las Vegas instead. So, here, what we're looking at is a rating of the neighborhoods in and around Vegas. Here, right here, is where the Vegas Strip is, if you see right here. But to the north and west of it, these are generally considered the more desirable markets or neighborhoods. And you see that as you go more west and a little bit more north here, northwest of the Strip tends to be the more upscale neighborhoods. Here's Summerlin here, that's known to have better schools, lower crime. Here is where downtown Las Vegas is, and historically has been pretty bad, very run down, very old. But in recent years, just really within the last decade or so since the downturn, there's been quite a bit of redevelopment here. There are lots of upgraded casinos in this area. There are more activities and festivals that are drawing larger audiences, and companies moving here, specifically companies like Zappos that have made their headquarters in this area. So Joe knows that, even though that there are some areas that are not as good as other areas, generally things have been in a good trend. And so, he doesn't want to do something that is too crazy in terms of having to do a lot of rehab and construction. He doesn't have the skill set. He doesn't know that yet. He's just starting out. He wants to start with something simple, something that he can buy that doesn't have to take much work or any work, that he can rent out and make a decent return on that and get his feet wet in terms of investing, and then potentially move on to something a little bit more aggressive later. So to further understand the neighborhoods he's looking at, he's looking at a long-term hold. He wants to find a tenant that wants to eventually live there, but maybe just don't have the down payment or the credit to buy a home right now, but they want to live in a neighborhood and raise a family. So where do people want to live long-term and raise families? Well, where there are good schools, right? So here we're looking at all the schools in and around Vegas, the elementary schools, and you'll see that as I adjust the school ratings, we'll get to see where the actually good schools are. So here, if I start to eliminate the schools that aren't rated very well, right, getting rid of the 4s and the 5s and the 6s, and then we're left with the 9s and 10s, 8, 9s, and 10s, we see that versus the Strip, they tend to be on the west side and north, right? And maybe just a few here on this 95 corridor here, but generally in this area. Okay, so Spring Valley, but the more on the west side of it. So you see this little area that tends to have the better schools. And so Joe decides that he's going to want to find a property that's around in these neighborhoods here. Okay, now over here, all these nice schools here, these are going to be the highest price homes here. So he might want to find something kind of right in the sweet spot here, where people that can't quite afford to be in the most expensive neighborhoods, but want to be in a place that have good schools and where these neighborhoods have been improving, and they're starting, the property values are starting to go up. There's more and more development in these areas. So he works with a local agent, and they find him these 4 listings. So we're going to look at the first one. The first one the agent found him is for a townhouse. It's 2-bed, 2-bath, and the price looks very attractive at only under $90,000. It's a smaller footprint, but it's in a market that's getting good rent, close to $1,000 in rent still, even for a townhouse. So we can see the photos here. It's part of a community. It looks a little old, looks a little dated, but the fixtures and things look like they're in decent condition. Doesn't need to be replaced right away, but might need to be replaced if he's hanging on to it for the long term. Okay, maybe some paint work needs to be done. All right, but not some heavy work right away. So that's the first one. Let's take a look at the second property. Second property is listed at 100,000. It's much bigger. It's 5-bed, 3-bath, and 1,600 square feet. That's a very low price for a house that's that big in the area. Something like this, Joe knows that could run up to 200,000. So something's going on here. What's going on? And when he goes and takes a look at the photo, it looks very, very beaten down. There's a lot of water damage, lots, basically fixtures that need to be replaced, roofs that need to be replaced. It looks like it was completely trash. Everything needs to be redone. Walls need to be redone. It looks like there was some wires and piping that were stripped. Could potentially be mold. There's a reason why this thing is listed at such low prices. It needs a whole lot of work. And, Joe's not really up for something like this yet. He's not that confident in doing a fixer-upper. He may want to do this later on by working with someone who's done it and co-investing and doing a project together, but maybe not for the first one that he's doing himself. The third property is a 3-bed, 3-bath, 1,368 square feet, listed for 135,000, and it's in a neighborhood more on the west side, right near the 95, and this is one of those where it should technically be a little bit more expensive. It's in an area that homes have consistently sold for 150, 160 plus. So, he's looking at this and he realizes it's a short sale. So it's a short sale where the owner has the bank's approval to sell it at a lower price just to be able to cover the cost of the mortgage. But this looks like something that could be interesting. And when he looks at the photos, it's detached. So it's standalone. Everything looks like it's in very good condition. The fixtures actually look pretty new. The appliances look really new. There's not much that he needs to do. It looks like it's move-in ready. When the tenant moves out, all he needs to do is probably just do a little cleaning and he can have it ready to rent out. All right, so what's the fourth one? The fourth one is a 3-bed, 2-bath, a little bit smaller, single-family home, listed for 146,000. In a similar part of the neighborhood, a little bit more west for this one. And taking a look at it, the fixtures are a little bit older. The space seems a little bit smaller than the previous one. But otherwise, it looks like it's in very, usable condition. Not quite as attractive as the one he saw earlier. All right, so Joe gathers more information about all 4 of these potential properties. And what he gathered is this, right? We have the townhouse. It looks very cheap, right? And, the zip code in that area, it's in a nice zip code. Homes are selling for 200,000 there. But, let's see. The pros is it's very affordable. There's very low mortgage, right? It's in a high occupancy area. There's, very low vacancy. It means you can pretty much fill it up within a couple of weeks of listing it. But as he dug into it, there was a major con here. It's a townhouse and it was part of a community and it has very high HOAs, $290 a month. And it's also right next to a mobile home park. And that tends to lower the property values when you're right next to a mobile home park. And, the fixtures look pretty old, likely to be replaced within 10 years. So if you bought it and want to sell it later, he'll probably need to replace it in order to give the top value, right? So if he went with this deal at 25% down, he would be putting in $22,000. But his estimated monthly payments, including the HOAs, would be $750. And when he dug around for rents for a townhouse, 2-bedroom, it was renting for about $950 to a little over $1,000. But this one was kind of older, so he wanted to be conservative and assumed that he'll get $950. And he's looking at cash flows of about $200 here. The 5-bedroom, 3-bed fixer-upper, the one that was really dilapidated, it's in a good zip code, decent, median sale price here of $170,000. Right, it's a very large footprint, the largest house, definitely well below the comparable listings in the same area. But this thing requires major repairs. There's a lot of damage, and when he got just a quick advice from one of his fixer-upper friends, they estimate at least $30,000 in rehab work in order to get this to a usable state, maybe even more. He's not willing to take on that big of a risk right now, so he's gonna hold off on that probably. But looking at this is the kind of deal that he may be interested in later when he gets more confident. At 25% down, he puts only $24,000 in. The estimated monthly payments on the mortgage, including taxes and fees here, are just going to be $417 a month, and this area tends to rent for at least $1,200 after rehab, right? So that could be a pretty good cash flow play here. But let's take a look at the remaining two here now, right? Similar listing price, about $10,000 difference. This one, the reason it's listed higher, even though it looks a little bit older, is because it's in an even nicer, more expensive neighborhood. In that zip code, the sale price is about $20,000 higher than the one here. Now, the good thing about both of these is they're both next to great schools. There's no HOAs. Fixtures are in good condition. This one is in very good condition. Both in very good parts of town, right? Major cons is, looks like there are multiple bids here. And looking at some prior transactions in these markets, Joe noticed that these listings recently have been selling for, about $5,000 to $10,000 above the listing price. So that's what he's going to assume that he'll have to pay in order to get one of these units. So assuming 25% down, this is what he would have to put down. These are the monthly payments for each of these. And then here are the rents, right? So just looking from his perspective now, it looks like these two would be much better candidates for Joe, right? But later on, this could be a good candidate as well. And the townhouse, even though it's very cheap with the HOAs, it's pretty clear to Joe that the cash flows and the returns aren't going to be as attractive. So Joe decides to take the townhouse out of the running, and he will take out the rehab, work one, the fixer-upper option. And lastly, between the two that's left, they're both very good, but this one has way better fixtures. It's in a similarly good community, and he thinks he could get it for cheaper and get a better return ultimately. They're very similar. This one's in nicer condition and potentially better return. So he's going to get rid of the other one, really pursue this one right here.